Michigan has a diverse cultural population, and because of that, it spawns a lot of questions about who stays in America, who goes back to their homeland, and who can enter this country and stay and be a productive working member of our society. We're going to talk about that next right here on Due Process.
Major funding for Due Process is provided by Meade Lexus of Southfield and Meade Lexus of Lakeside, offering a large selection of new and pre-owned certified premium vehicles.
Because we can't reinvent traffic, we reinvented how the driver navigates around it. You can learn more about this and other reinventions at lexus.com/allnewrx.
And by WWJ News Radio 950, keeping you up to date with the latest news, traffic, weather, sports, and business information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I'm Henry Baskin, your host for this edition of Due Process. We're going to be talking about immigration law and all that it entails with two very knowledgeable people. There is a program at University of Detroit Mercy Law School, and I think the director of the program is David Koelsch. Is that correct?
That's correct.
David, thank you so much for being here. I really I think it's important that we put the issues on the table and talk about why it is that here in this state, which is on a border with another country, it has issues that we haven't quite dealt with yet, and we should discuss.
Sure.
I would like to also welcome Peter Antone to the show. Peter, what's the name of your firm?
Antone, Casagrande, and Adwers in Farmington Hills.
And you practice in the area of immigration law, right?
That's all what I do, and I also teach immigration law.
Okay. Having known several immigration attorneys, I've watched them from day to day with files stacked up to here, trying to have engineers come over, and other skilled people come into this country. What is the, as far as U of D Mercy is concerned in your program, what is a single, if you could have a single issue that trumps all the other issues with respect to immigration?
Sure. Well, with respect to the clinical programs that I work in, we actually deal mostly with people who are coming here seeking protection for humanitarian reasons.
Okay.
So asking for political or religious or those type of asylum issues come up. But we also are dealing with people who are sponsoring family members to come to the United States, and to a limited extent employers, especially religious institutions who are sponsoring ministers and priests and sisters to come over and work here in the United States.
It's very interesting. Is there, and Peter, I'm going to call you Peter.
Peter, sure, that's fine.
Is there a quota for certain countries, certain cultures, certain religions as far as immigration is concerned?
Well, no, there isn't. There is a quota for global type of quota that applies to all countries.
Right.
So if a high qualified engineer is needed by an American company, whether temporarily or permanently, there are a limited number of visas available to that individual. For example, for a green card, if a firm wants to bring a talented foreign scientist here, the process for a green card might take a couple of years.
Okay, but a green card gives someone the right to work here for how long a period of time?
Well, a green card is permanent.
It's permanent?
Yeah, a person can stay here permanently and can ultimately apply to become a U.S. citizen.
Okay.
For a temporary work visa, there are annual quotas. And if the quota is reached, then there'll be there may not be ability to bring any more.
So it's a quota. It's a universal quota. It has nothing to do with the state of Michigan as such.
You're right. It doesn't. It's nationwide.
Okay. And who sets the quotas? Congress? Or?
Yes, Congress sets the quotas, and typically those quotas are filled within a few days.
Really?
Yes, but this year, because of the recession, the quotas are still available now, which really kind of goes against the perception that it's a cheap labor, because if it's cheap labor, then they'll be brought in a recession.
Well, you say it goes against, he says it goes against the recession. I mean, is that counterintuitive? How does that work? They are trying to limit the number of people?
Right. Well, there's an annual cap on how many either temporary employment-based visas are given out or other types of visas are given out on an annual basis. So if you hit that cap, there are no more visas. What makes it difficult, though, is for employers to run their business. If you're a chemical or an automotive engineering company, it's very difficult to know what your business is going to be like 2 years down the road,
right,
knowing who you'll need if the visa process can take, as Peter mentioned, 2 years.
Well, you know, the papers, the media will highlight some egregious thing. I'm going to send this mother back and she's going to leave her daughter here, or they've been here for years and years and years. And I want to get into that. But does anybody quarrel with the initial premise that this country was built on it by immigration? That this is, nobody was here until the immigrants arrived. So how do they arbitrarily say you can have 15 from here, 15 from Mauritania, or 20 from, I don't quite understand how they justify the quotas.
Sure.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think what many people may need to know is that immigration law wasn't always as tough as it is today. The immigration law of today primarily was affected by a 1996 act, which made it very difficult for people to come here and to stay here or to even become legal here.
Well, in 1996, we didn't have a recession. That was before 2001.
Yes.
So what happened in 1996?
Well, I don't want to sound political, but
Well, it
was a
does
change.
become political.
There was a change in the makeup of Congress, and many of the people coming to Congress at that time came with the idea that their base would want a limitation on immigration, and that actually triggered the 1996 Act. Immigration law.
You would think that it's a fairly simple process. People come here, they want political asylum, okay? They want religious asylum. So there must be a list somewhere of those places where they deny freedom of religion or where these people would be in danger politically.
Sure. Yes. There is, but it also comes down to credibility. If the person is telling the truth, anybody can come here and you know, sing a sad song about things that happen in their home country, but it comes down to credibility. Are they really telling the truth? And that's an individualized determination made in front of an asylum officer or an immigration judge.
Well, your clinic works pro bono, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what kind of cases do you take?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, asylum cases, we do a lot of those. We've done those for about 12 years now. We also represent, there's a number of juveniles, children who leave Central America and Mexico fleeing gang violence.
Right.
They make their way up here to the United States. They're placed in foster care in Michigan, and we represent them. There's a special process for them to get their legal status here.
So, okay. And Peter, you represent people who are employers who want people here?
Yes.
You represent families?
We do as well.
That say, look, you're going to send my husband back and leave me here.
That's true.
Those are pretty tough cases.
They're very tough, and what's unfortunate is, for the most part, there is no discretion. There's very little discretion, even in a humanitarian situation, even where there's a compelling need. For example, the father could be a decent guy that just happened to have come here years ago, no crime, no criminal history, working hard, paying taxes, and yet he's been deported, and you have his children, U.S. citizens, separated from his kids, from his wife. It's really a sad situation. We have cases like that.
One of the difficulties, and you know, Peter is touching on this, but especially when you look at the immigration debate, is, you know, people on each side of it have well-reasoned arguments. The contrary view is that somebody who came here illegally, no matter how many years ago, no matter how good of a person he is, no matter how much he's paying in taxes, he still came here illegally, whereas somebody who played by the rules may still be waiting outside the country to get a visa the right way. So
Well,
there are reasoned arguments on both sides of the equation.
Well, there's an analogy out there. There was a woman who escaped from prison in Michigan maybe 20 years ago, went to California, had a family, raised a family, was a model citizen, took part in parent-teacher things and community affairs and things such as that. They found her, brought her back to Michigan, She spent about 2 months here, and she was released by the governor on a pardon or whatever it was. And I'm saying, is it fair to say that someone who comes here illegally and makes a great life for his family and for his community or her community should have to go back?
Well, I want to mention that to start with, many of those who came here illegally came as minors with their parents.
With their parents.
And they really didn't commit anything illegal because
they didn't have
they
a
had no
choice.
choice.
Right.
Yet today, those people are facing a horrible situation. They might never know any other country, and yet they are treated as undocumented aliens, but that's not their fault.
Well, if they commit a crime, I mean, how do people find out? How does the government find out who's legal and who's not?
Right. Well, there's an estimated anywhere from 10 to 12 million undocumented immigrants in the United States.
Okay.
Even now, with the economy sending some people home, they're living under the radar screen. I mean, we all on a daily basis come into contact with them. It's just that you don't know it.
Do they have Social Security numbers?
They could have no Social Security number or a fake Social Security
Do they
number.
pay taxes?
In many cases, they do pay taxes. In fact,
Okay.
that's one thing. Undocumented immigrants actually pay money into Social Security, for example,
They do.
that they will never get out of Social Security,
Money withheld, and they'll never get it back.
And we're
So
talking
that's-
about billions of hundreds of billions of dollars, actually.
which is a windfall to those of us who hopefully will get something out of Social Security.
See, being a first-generation American, I have a bias. So, I mean, we don't have anybody here to argue against the way I feel, and obviously you feel the same way I feel, that this country was founded on certain principles. And as a matter of fact, a whole bunch of people came here from England and said, hey, we're out of here and we're going to start it. So we are tough on people. But the other day, there was a FBI raid on some, I don't even know if they were here legally or illegally. They said they're terrorists, and they killed one of the leaders and said, okay, the rest of you are going to jail and will be deported. Now, then when you talk about deportation, where are you sending these people? To Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Are you going to send them to Iraq? Are you going to send them to Iran? Where do you send them?
Actually, to my knowledge, I think most of the people who were involved in that raid are native-born U.S. citizens.
They were
There may
citizens.
be a few people who are not U.S. citizens, but
Okay.
they would go through a process. There could be potential criminal charges, there could be immigration charges, and they could be deported back to their home countries.
And while they're waiting for the process, are they incarcerated?
Yes, yes.
So they're incarcerated. I mean, go ahead, Peter.
But we need to separate issues of national security from immigration. They are really two separate issues. Immigration
Right.
is good to America, and we shouldn't be afraid. We shouldn't just treat all immigrants as potential threat, because that would undermine who we are as a nation.
Well, the problem is that you talk about the economy. Now, tough times, and people say, wait a minute, we don't need any more workers here. By the same token, I've watched some Mexican immigrants up in Traverse City picking cherries. No one wanted the job except them. I've watched gardeners engage these people for the season, and they live in these small places, save money, go back to Mexico. I was in near McLean, Virginia, at a hospital, and there was a gigantic birthing area, pregnant people. A lot of Guatemalans were there, and they were there. The flags of all nations were in this hospital, and they were about to give birth to children. Now, assumedly, when they do that, that child will be an American citizen, right?
Right.
Okay, but there's no guarantee that the parents are going to stay here.
True.
Correct.
So I don't know, you had that thing with the young boy in Florida out of Cuba,
Right.
and he finally was sent back. But the point is, I got on an elevator at that hospital, and some lady said to me, we have to do something about this. I said, lady, I don't live here, I don't agree with you, but you don't know the story. But it's just that there's this pushback from people that say, why are we paying for their medical care?
Yeah.
And why are we allowing them to be here?
Which is certainly understandable on one level. Just going back to the economy for a minute. I mean, it is counterintuitive, especially with Michigan's economy being in the state it's in with the highest unemployment in the country, to argue for increased immigration levels to Michigan. But one thing I think is important, and it gets lost in the public debate, is that not all immigrants are created equal in an economic sense, and that Michigan could actually benefit, and the residents of Michigan could benefit from bringing in immigrants who have a high education, who have job skills. They can come here, they'd be happy to come here, and they can earn a decent wage, they pay taxes at a high level, they could even employ U.S. citizens. That, by allowing well-educated immigrants to come to Michigan, we could actually kickstart our economy and do something about the unemployment. So we're not just talking about immigrants coming here illegally, having children here. There's also, the United States is still a magnet for legal immigrants to come here and work and raise their families.
Yeah. Well, there was a study done, I read it in the Wall Street Journal. Historically, periods of high immigration quotas to the United States are periods of low unemployment. It's counterintuitive. I mean, and I think the reason is the following. When people come here, they not only work, but they also become part of the consuming public. They rent a house, they buy a home, they buy furniture, they become...
They stimulate
the economy. So you need to look at the balance. And every study shows that the balance is positive.
Yeah, I can see the arguments on the other side, but we're going to go to a break. When we come back, I want to ask each of you about the case that you've handled, that most impressed you, that was one of your tougher situations. We'll be right back right after this.
Legal referrals and more information on this and other related topics are available on our website at www.dueprocess.tv. There you'll find information on today's program, helpful hints to legal issues, support materials, and lawyer referrals. You can also stream previous episodes of Due Process.
We're back at Due Process talking about immigration with the two gentlemen who I think know more about the situation that's going on right now, both in the state of Michigan and in the United States. And each of you have taken cause cases, I know. I mean, you've been impressed by a situation that seemed to be so incorrect that you fought for it. And I know at the clinic that you have more than enough clients. Right. I mean, it's all lined up. Tell us about one of your cases that really impressed you as being important to you, important to our community.
Right. We have hundreds of cases that really tug at your heartstrings, but a couple stand out. One in particular involves a young woman from India who is actually married to a U.S. citizen, and he's actually of Indian origin himself. He became a U.S. citizen, and then he married in India and brought his wife here. Well, the marriage devolved into very severe domestic abuse, and he ended up being charged by the police. In the process, instead of allowing her to get the green card through him, through the marriage, he tried to have her deported. And then we jumped in and were able to not only prevent her from being deported, but were able to have her retain her green card. And that's a situation where somebody who came here with the best intentions, thinking she was going to enter into a good marriage and become a part of American society and contribute, and had a lot to give our society, very highly educated. Her life was in jeopardy, and her immigration status was in jeopardy through no fault of her own. Well, and we were able to jump in and keep that from happening.
Well, that's interesting, because do I then understand to get a green card you have to have more of an education than the average person?
No, there's actually two main streams of immigrants to the United States. One is family-based. So if you have a family member, so for example in this case, her husband is a U.S. citizen, he can sponsor her. Her education didn't matter. We would take anybody. In this case, she happens to be very well educated. The other stream of immigration is employment-based, where education, job skills, those do matter a lot.
They do matter.
Right.
So what do you argue your case? Is it immigration naturalization or
U.S. Immigration Court?
Okay. When you argue cases there, do you have to prove that that person can contribute they can be self-sufficient, or what do you have to argue?
Yes, in many cases we do. That they're going to be a productive member of society. That they, if they've been here, that they've been paying taxes, that
Right.
they've been contributing, they've been just doing all the things that we want citizens to do.
You know, I guess the difficult part is that we've asked several people to come on the show and talk about their immigration status, but they refused. I mean, they thought if they came on and talked about it, that they would be put in a bad position.
Right.
But there has to be some basic understanding of where we're sending these people. I mean, you have a mother who, and I don't know if you had this case, Peter, but you have a mother with children. Are you gonna say these children are American citizens, but they don't enjoy the same rights and privileges of having a parent that other kids have? I don't. They go to foster home, and they have a choice. They can either go back with their mother if she's here illegally,
Yes.
or go to a foster home.
Yes.
Have you had
I
cases
mean, that's
like that?
well, that's a hard. By the way, I think there is such a decision, and the immigration opinion is those kids can go with their mom to the foreign country now, or they can stay with some relatives. It is a sad situation. We had a case in our office where a person was deported. He was working in a company. They told me he is their best worker, and after he was deported, his 3 U.S. kids had the psychological problems. They went on welfare with the mother, and the mother is a U.S. citizen. So I mean, who are we benefiting here? But I want to mention something related to a business-based immigration.
Sure.
We represent a multinational company that is a British company, and I want to tell you about a recent things that the owner told me. He's a British citizen. He told me they do business all over the world. Doing business in America today is more difficult than doing business in East Europe. From the immigration point of view, all the hassles they have to go through, all the paperwork, all the complication, all the expense. I really felt very sad. It's very sad when somebody tells you that America is becoming less attractive because of all the immigration hurdles. Now we're talking about business visas, but even those are becoming difficult to get, very expensive. It costs about $6,000 between government filing fees and attorney fees to bring somebody here. Well, he could be working for 2-3 months and he goes to work somewhere else. It's just the investment that they need to put is, and the hassles they need to put, the immigration places before international companies are becoming a lot, and that's really that undermines our competitive as in the global economy.
So what you're saying is that multinational company will take the work to Latvia and say, okay, well, it's easier getting there than it is getting here.
Absolutely. Well, Microsoft did that. Microsoft opened a lab in Vancouver. Yes, and the reason, and I have an article, actually it was written in the paper, they said it's becoming so difficult to bring talented, bright people to America, we had to open this in Canada and bring them there to do their experimentation there.
Has to be a reason. What is the reason?
Sure. One of the reasons is the quota system. The quotas are set too low on an annual basis for how many people we give employment-based visas to. That's one issue. The other issue, as Peter alluded to, is just the bureaucracy, the process that people have to go through.
But we've always had the bureaucracy.
We've always had the bureaucracy, but in this case, it's really ramped up. And there are, as Peter mentioned, it makes sense to separate security from immigration. Obviously, people are coming from another country. We want to know who they are. We want to make sure they're not going to cause us harm. There is a way to do that without jamming up the system and making that process much more streamlined.
When someone has to leave, when someone's deported, and they look behind and there's their family standing there waving goodbye to Dad, is there any chance that he could ever come back to this country?
Sure, there is. And there's a process where, for example, if his spouse or his children are U.S. citizens, they can sponsor him to come back.
Oh, they can.
But he may have a 10year bar on coming back to the United States, and it's very difficult to get a waiver of that 10-year bar.
Who imposes that bar?
By law.
The Department of Homeland Security.
It's by law.
By law.
Homeland Security?
Right.
Well, Homeland Security would be involved only if there was some kind of indicia of terrorism or
No,
something.
not necessarily.
Homeland
No, Homeland
is-
Security is involved in every aspect of immigration.
What countries do they target?
In terms of,
Homeland Security. I mean, it's
well,
saying,
every country around the world, including the United States.
well, they put a 10-year bar on someone coming back. They have to have a reason for it.
Oh, sure, because he's violated the immigration laws by being here illegally. That's the reason, not because he's a terrorist, not because he's a criminal, but because he's been here illegally.
Okay, let's leave the northern part and let's go down to Texas and California.
Right.
How do you deal with that? I mean, every day, thousands of people cross the border, and they become part of the society of Texas and California.
And Michigan.
And they come up to Michigan. How do you deal with that? How do you answer that? You can't pick them all up and truck them back.
Right. I think one of the issues is border security, and even with the increased levels of border security, we've never spent so much money on the southwestern border as we are now.
Right.
And yet it is almost as porous as it has ever been.
Well, I have to tell you that we're running out of time. As you see, the lights are dimming, but I want to thank you so much for keeping up the good fight. You know, doing what's right for families and people. And congratulations to you.
Major funding for Due Process is provided by Meade Lexus of Southfield and Meade Lexus of Lakeside, offering a large selection of new and pre-owned certified premium vehicles.
Because we can't reinvent traffic, we reinvented how the driver navigates around it. You can learn more about this and other reinventions at lexus.com/allnewrx.
And by WWJ News Radio 950, keeping you up to date with the latest news, traffic, weather, sports, and business information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.